doc for Q&A, so please submit questions there. Vote up, vote down, what you want to hear from them about. Thanks.
Thank you for coming. So I'm Jim Rabin. I am the senior manager of the front-end web development team as well as the web quality assurance team for net.com. I also facilitate the Scrum process for the team.
Hi, my name is Sam Wong, and I'm the product owner team lead for the digital marketing team at NetApp. At a high level, my role is to manage the incoming requirements and the order in which they get completed.
So today we're going to walk you through, again, very short blurb about what NetApp and what we do. Talk about the pain points of Waterfall and why we made that switch and how we built that case for moving to Agile. And then we'll talk about how we communicate executive status to our leadership teams. And then tying things up, we'll talk about a success story that came out of moving to Agile, as well as our lessons learned since we've been operating in Agile. So NetApp is one of the largest data storage, cloud, and hybrid cloud product and solution companies in the world. NetApp is based out of Sunnyvale, California, and has over 13,000 employees worldwide. This year, NetApp was voted the number 4 best place to work for of multinational companies, and I've been on the Fortune 100 best place to work for list for 13 consecutive years.
Jim and I are part of the digital marketing team, which has roughly about 60 employees in our organization. This doesn't include our agencies. Our team consists of strategists, project managers, UX, marketing automation, as well as developers and other roles. Primarily, the type of work that the digital marketing team handles can be broken into 3 groups. We have launches and announcements, marketing-driven initiatives, and maintenance and updates to the 20 digital properties that we currently maintain. Before the digital marketing team moved to Agile, we operated in a waterfall model. In this project framework, you must complete the current phase before moving on to the next phase. This can be extremely challenging when working in an environment that is constantly changing in terms of requirements and priorities. So what were the pain points that the digital team encountered while operating in this waterfall process? 1, we spent a lot of time ramping up and winding down projects because the current phase had to be completed before moving on to the next phase. If a delay occurred at the beginning of a phase, we would have to stop progress and start over. And this effect caused a lot of idle time for an unenclosed period of time. Second, we needed to show progress to our stakeholders frequently, as well as collect their feedback. Our stakeholders are very visual people and need to see something tangible in order to provide feedback, which goes hand in hand with our third challenge, the inability to change course mid-project. If you wanted to change something, you had to stop the current progress and start over from scratch, causing major delays. And fourth was failing fast. We weren't able to determine quickly enough whether a project was going to be successful and still viable. This illustration on the next slide shows just how complicated waterfall can be in our process.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard. We knew we could do better. We knew we could move faster. So we wanted to experiment with Agile, and we had a hunch it would work for us because we knew that Agile was not just for engineers and software development teams. Other teams, such as digital marketing, could take advantage of Agile principles and make it work. So this was when we first started out, this is actually our vision statement. I'm not going to read this off to you, but I highly encourage any group that's looking to make this move to Agile to start with a vision statement. That will drive your entire move to make that recommendation, but also after you make that move, it'll drive your operations as well. This statement did not change since we written a year and a half ago. So building the case to move to Agile in digital marketing. At first, we started small. So we started on a few pilot projects, about 5, with just a handful of developers on just some small projects, just kicking the tires on Agile and learning it at the same time. And for all 5 of those efforts, all of them went extremely well. We moved faster, more efficiently. We did it cheaply. Quality was up, but also, and this is great to see, people were more engaged. That was fantastic. And once we finished these pilot projects, we decided let's expand this to the larger group, to digital marketing. So we built a cross-functional team of developers as well as project managers to make this case, to expand this to all digital marketing. So working with our leadership team to evangelize this concept and talking about our pilot projects, if you can tell you're faster, cheaper, more efficiently, higher quality, and your team members are more engaged, they're not going to say no to that, most of the time anyway. So once you have your buy-in, hopefully you do, then you get into your rollout. And during that rollout, you're going to spend a lot of time communicating, repeating yourself, and repeating yourself again. And that's okay, particularly around roles and responsibilities as well as terminology around the Agile process. Because if you're working with a team that's not a development team or an engineering team, they're not going to know a lot of the Agile terminology, such as what is a Scrum Master, what is Agile, what is a sprint. They're not going to know this. So you got to spend a lot of time communicating this out and letting folks know what this stuff means and how it will influence them. This slide here is actually something we copy and pasted from our rollout to digital marketing into this deck to illustrate some of the ways we actually communicated this out. So for us in digital marketing, an initiative is a collection of projects or epics. An epic is a project. A story is a smaller, more focused requirement in support of an epic. Everybody knows what a story is in this room, more likely. And a subtask is used by the Scrum team to execute against those stories in a sprint. Along with these visuals, we actually, to help train folks and ensure understanding, we actually produced a package of printed out package for all the team members in digital marketing, as well as posted this information to Confluence so that folks could learn at their own pace. As we were building out this model, we felt it important to build familiar and scalable roles that can grow with us. If you're thinking about your roles and responsibilities for just the next couple of weeks, you're going to fail. You got to think a year out and even further than that, because we found if you made this move, you're going to move faster, you're going to move more efficiently, and you're going to have to be able to keep up with all that. So ensure that those roles and responsibilities are scalable that can grow with you. Just a couple of visuals. This is one way we communicated what those roles and responsibilities are. Some of our roles didn't actually change, and some folks need to be reassured of that. We probably added a couple roles of product owner, Scrum Master, and a few others. Some roles, such as project manager, didn't really change, but we wanted to make sure that folks knew their roles weren't changing. And so this is how we actually communicated that. We were very specific around who does what when, who is responsible for what. Again, this is all in our package that went out to the digital marketing team. So we wouldn't be at the summit if we weren't using the Atlassian tools to facilitate this entire process. We have been Atlassian customers since 2008, originally starting out with just using Jira for bug tracking. And then we expanded that to do project management, and then we just switched over to Agile, but we're also customers for the entire stack of Atlassian tools, such as Jira Service Desk and whatnot. But today we're just going to focus on Jira and Confluence. One note, on the next few slides, you're going to see some legacy versions of Jira and Confluence. You'll notice we're referencing Jira Agile there. Agile is actually baked into Jira software. So if you're considering making the migration to Jira software, Agile is baked into that. Jira Core can also be leveraged for other business teams such as HR, finance, and sales to drive your operations as well. So if you haven't seen those talks, I believe they're posting some video about those products very soon. So please check those out. They're great products. Last year at the summit, I learned about the Confluence requirements blueprint, and I was blown away. I was like, we got to do this. It's a great way to have conversations around your scope of your project and to build stories in a working session. When we took that blueprint, took a step further, we actually tailored it for our organization. And I highly encourage you to do this. It's very easy to do, very, very easy to set up. And we also built story templates that are specific to us. We don't use out of the box. We felt it important to do that because we wanted to have a way for project managers, product owners, development team members to work together to speak the consistent language and have a governance model around building those stories out. But also, when those stories go into a sprint, the development team has a consistent way of looking and parsing information so we can move at lightning speed. This is a screenshot of our Confluence requirements blueprint. As you can see, it's very subtle changes outlining who our engagement owner is, more or less the Epic owner, our project managers, all those involved with the effort. And as I mentioned before, it's very easy to create stories from here. You can make this particular effort and specifically I believe had 30 stories. We made 30 stories in about 3 seconds after we outlined our stories in this table below. And this is our story template. It's probably probably hard to read from the crowd there, but as you can see, it's very specific to us, a very consistent format. All the project managers and stakeholders conform to this format, and it makes it very easy for us to speak the same language cross-functionally, and very easy for the Scrum teams to parse this information and knock it out. One thing we learned in our pilot projects, and this is more or less an Agile 101 thing, if a story will take longer than a sprint to complete, you have to break it apart into smaller chunks. And stories have got to be actionable. If they're not actionable, by the time it goes into planning, it doesn't make it in the sprint. It goes back in the backlog. When you're moving to Agile, excuse me, it's very important to understand your roadmap and prioritize your epics and stories accordingly.
Yeah, when you're working in marketing, you get inundated with requests constantly. And how your team decides to prioritize these requests will determine how you guys are successful. So this right here is an actual screenshot of our backlog. On the left-hand side, we have epics that we can drag up and down based on the priority, as well as on the right-hand column are stories that are in a current sprint. One thing that we learned quickly was we decided not to use the generic naming for our sprint. We actually decided to put the date of our sprint, which is a 2-week length, into the sprint. This allowed us to communicate with our stakeholders directly. Instead of saying sprint number 5 is when you can expect this, we are going to say October 10th through the 17th is when this sprint will be concluded. This really helped a lot of the questions that came in on when is my stuff going to be completed? In addition to that, we get constantly asked, how does the product owner team prioritize stories? So I'm going to quickly go over this first. We first tackle things that are go-to-market that have dates. We're going to ensure that those projects are completed first. Second, we take a look at projects that have a large impact to our user base, as well as the projects that have the largest chance to increase demand. These projects can include updating our header, our global header and footer, as well as pay-per-click, search engine optimization, and A/B testing on our digital properties. We also do use maintenance epics to tackle things that are kind of taking out the trash, as we call it. You know, they're constant, they're bugs, they're things that kind of exist long term. This is one of the reasons why your stories have to be actionable. It makes it really easy to quickly drag and drop them to fill the team's capacity. One thing that we all deal with is prioritization conflicts, and we're going to have to deal with them. You're going to have times where a VP is going to come to you and say, my project is most important, or you get another one saying, my project is more important than your project, or they're on the same day. And we try to deal with that internally first. The project managers, the scrum masters, the product owners, and stakeholders all try to solve that internally. However, we do know that at times we're going to have to escalate that to our senior management to help us provide coverage. One of the concerns that the transition team heard frequently was, when is my project going to be completed? What is the current status of my project? And when will my project be worked on? The digital marketing team currently is using a structure plugin to communicate these questions or answers. So this right here is actually a screenshot of our structure plugin. We use this to communicate status as well as who owns the project and some notes. This is dynamic. We pulled this directly from our Jira board, and that's one of the powerful things about this plugin. We don't have to it syncs automatically. If we drag our prioritization or change the priorities in our Jira Agile board, it syncs over here and vice versa. So our users who come and look at this can quickly understand when where their project is in terms of priority, who's working on it, and what the status is quickly. One thing that you don't see here is the hierarchy. There's a little tiny arrow next to each of our epics. You can click on this and you can quickly see what stories are part of this epic, as well as the subtasks that are associated, all in one view. In addition to the structure plugin, the product owner team and the senior digital management team meet weekly to discuss priorities as well as project status. We use a Confluence meeting note template to drive these meetings and discuss the following. We talk about current project status that are in the actual sprint. We talk about upcoming projects and stories, as well as any kind of priority conflicts that may have arisen that week.
So we've been operating in Agile officially for about a year and a half. Shortly after we made the transition, we actually branded it. We call it Digital Marketing Agile. It's our phrase for it. But one of the things we like to highlight that took place during our move to Agile was our corporate rebrand. Last year in October of 2014, we were going to rebrand everything across the board, and digital marketing was going to be the forefront of that, starting with the website. So this is what our website looked like before the rebrand. Not bad, but it could use a facelift. That was more tailored towards the messaging we wanted to portray, but also more appealing to our audience. This is the after. This website is fully responsive, and we rolled this out across 20 countries globally, across thousands of web pages. It works on your mobile phone, mobile devices, your tablets, your laptop, desktop, even 4K monitors. Your experience will flex depending on your experience, and it's all driven by one code base. We did this in 7 weeks, including testing and rollout. We also rolled out other things such as rebranding our email marketing collateral, as well as other things such as our demos for our products, as well as our pay-per-click collateral. We did this 3 times faster as a result of Agile. Our previous rebrand done in Waterfall took us about 6 months to get through with more people. We did this with a handful of folks in 7 weeks. So Agile works. If you're interested in making that transition, it does work. So lessons learned since we've been operating this way. An effective Agile implementation requires clear communication to all levels in your organization.
As Jim mentioned earlier, the transition team met with the entire digital team on an offsite. We spent 2 days walking through the entire team through Agile, roles and responsibilities, and the tool set. In addition to having clear communication, your transition team are going to be inundated with questions, so just be patient with your team members. One thing that helped was we set up a Confluence knowledge base to help provide self-service so that our employees could learn at their own pace. The second lesson we learned was embracing a culture that is open to failure and making improvements based on lessons learned.
This is very important. As you probably know about retrospectives, you talk about what worked and what didn't. We've learned more from our mistakes than our successes. And every single sprint, we analyze what did not go well and make actions to make improvements. And our best improvements have been a result of that. So, like Sam said, it's okay to fail, and work with your leadership team to embrace a culture that embraces that. It goes a long way. And lastly, this is probably the most important point of this talk. So if you're taking pictures, this is one you want to take a picture of here. Agile is not a project management methodology. It is a culture change, and it must be embraced by everybody to succeed.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Jim said here. It's got to be embraced by everyone, all the way from senior management, all the way down to your individual contributors. They have to be on board with this. But on the other hand, we know that Agile isn't going to fit every kind of environment, and that's okay. Just be open to try it, and if not, it doesn't work for you, then try to find something else that works. Or what we did was we adopted and modified Agile. We didn't take the true principles of Agile. We decided what works for us, and we modified it for the digital team.
Right. And it wasn't successful. It was okay at the outset, but we improved over time. So be patient, because it will be hard when you first make that move. I promise you it will be hard, but it does get better. Okay, that concludes our talk. Any questions?
All right. So we do have several questions. The first is, if you have large projects, can they be broken into sprints that run in parallel with separate teams working in each sprint?
Take that one. We actually, when we first started, we actually had 3 sprints running concurrently, and we actually had to trigger that using Jira Labs, which is not officially supported way of, but we did have 3 sprints running concurrently, all again running off that same backlog of work.
I will say that we did have concurrent sprints,
Yeah.
but they did start all on the same day,
Same
and
day.
they all ended at the same time.
Right.
And so if we did have projects that spanned multiple teams, the dependencies and risk were manageable.
Right.
Can you
It's-
expand? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's very important that they do start at the same time, consistency. The same planning meeting happens at the same time. If you're doing concurrent sprints, it all has to happen the same day. That's what we learned kind of as our best practice was the same time.
Can you expand on how you created story templates?
It's actually wiki markup. So I can go back to the slide there. All it is wiki markup. You have to believe you have to enable that in your Jira template to allow for that. And when you go into edit mode, you can it actually shows you there's a help button that shows you how to mark that up. But once you set it up, you can reuse it over and over again.
You mentioned dates and sprint names to communicate deadlines. Are sprints planned prior to the beginning of that sprint?
Yes. And we have a sprint planning meeting the week before the next sprint starts. And the product owners have already got a fresh slate of stories that have already been prioritized in that next sprint. And we talk through those and weigh those and do your typical Agile ceremony kind of stuff of weighing things and talking about what our gaps are, that kind of thing.
Okay, a couple more. How did you obtain baseline data to use as comparison post-Agile?
We were operating in Jira before we moved to Agile. We were just using Jira tasks to manage the work. And we monitored the volume of tasks that were opened as well as the amount of time it was taking us to do this. And we did an after snapshot as well when we moved to Agile as well. Again, it's all in Jira. So just comparing before and after, time frames, the volume of tasks, as well as the number of bugs that were logged. It's all in Jira. You just do basic filters and it gives you all the information you need.
Okay, for projects with fixed launch dates, are you able to sacrifice features or do you end up with dev heroics?
So we all know that project dates don't shift in marketing. They're normally coming driven by a higher date. A CEO or VP is going to be at this place, and we need to support that. But what we can control as product owners is what feature set gets shipped on those days, because we don't want to sacrifice quality. We want our website to be operating at 100%. We don't want bugs. So we do control what scope gets worked on and the timing. This can be difficult when you're working with multiple stakeholders, but this is something that one of the reasons why project managers and product owners have jobs, right? To interface with stakeholders and to cut scope.
Cool, here's one that is a good one, I think. You have an epic called SEO. I think that would be an initiative. How could you possibly close that epic or market is done?
See SEO?
Yeah, so we don't. And this is one of those things that isn't true Agile, right? Because we have an epic that is continuing forever,
yeah.
Essentially. But what we do is we pull stories out of there that based on priority, and we put them in our sprints, but the general epic ticket SEO stays open forever, as well as some of our other programs such as Adobe Test and Target. We also have communities supporting our community section, as well as site search. Those are kind of things that what we call digital programs that kind of stay around for forever.
Do you have a consolidated project status report?
Yes, that was in the structure plugin that Sam walked through. It's a kind of like an executive. You can't show a senior leadership team a board. They needed a cleaner roll-up of that. So Sam's going to pull that up in a second there. This is it right here.
This is just part of it. This is really just the top part. What we do here is we actually just talk about the epics in the current sprint, their status, and after this, we move on to epics that are in planning or in discovery, so that they can tell us, what is the priority on here? Are we staying on time? Are we continuing to feed the pipeline of the backlog? After that, we talk about conflicts, prioritization conflicts of things that are currently in progress or coming down the pipe.
Do you have a PMO?
We have a group of project managers as well as project owners. And so this was one of those things that we kind of adapted. We don't technically have a project management office, but we do have project managers and product owners.
Right.
How often do you communicate status to leadership?
We meet weekly. We meet every Thursday, and we go over this exact list. Sometimes we do have guest speakers come in to present their ideas and projects, but mostly it's this format right here.
Okay, and I'm not sure this is actually a new question, but can you expand on how you created story templates?
Yeah, again, it was most of it as wiki markup, and then we basically copy that and use that over and over again. We are making a V2 of that so that it's by default it shows up that way. But really, all of that you see there in the story, where there was wiki markup to make it look that way with the horizontal rules and the sections. It's all wiki markup, and I guess it's consistent for every story that's created.
Okay, last question. What are your next steps?
We are constantly changing, and one of the things that we are constantly changing, just even a couple of weeks ago, about a couple of weeks ago, was implementing a new Epic workflow. We decided that the current status and workflow for our epics weren't working. We decided to modify that. Even last week, we were talking about how do we make information more easily accessible to our developers. We constantly were getting requests and comments inside of our Jira stories like, we can't find this information. And so the team has met to discuss how do we make that information accessible to all of our developers and as well as PMs.